Operator Syndrome, episode 32. Um, Steve's got a topic he'll introduce for us today, something recent in the news.
Yes, very recent. It's just been brought to my attention. A New York Times piece ran on August 30th of 22, a couple of weeks ago, um, titled "Death in Navy SEAL Training Exposes a Culture of Brutality, Cheating, and Drugs." It's by author, he's a journalist, uh, and his name's Dave Phillips. He also wrote, I think he's won a couple of Pulitzer Prizes, so he's no slouch of a writer. He wrote the book Alpha, Eddie Gallagher and the Corruption of the Navy SEALs, or something like that. Don't quote me on that on the subtitle, but it was a book about a character who got into some trouble with war crimes accusations. Um, so it really, and now just Friday of when we're recording this on September 11th. Peace be with those who perished. Um, it was on September 9th, which is Friday, this last Friday. A subsequent piece came out in the Times by Phillips that gets a little more concerning to me about an investigation that's really starting to expand into some of these allegations. So, in the press, as it's always said, if it bleeds, it leads, and so you've got to cram a lot of sensationalism in there to make headlines, get your piece floated up toward the top of the paper headlines. So death in Navy SEALs always brings attention. In SEAL training, that's another phase of the SEALs, and then a culture of brutality. That sounds nice and pleasant. And then cheating and drugs. So, in my opinion, the title already conflates a bunch of things. Okay, a guy died in training. That's sad. It's tragic. It's not supposed to happen, but occasionally it does. So that's one issue. The cheating and drugs gets a little more murky. A lot of it's just allegations. A lot of it's he said, she said. So that's something else. Now, were drugs involved in the is a part cause of the death of this guy? Well, that's a big question that nobody really knows. And the more I've read about it, the more I don't know if they'll ever be able to answer that one, because I don't. Maybe they were related. I'm not a medical person, but plenty of people have done what he was doing and been fine making it through regular training, including his own class. So it gets a little speculative at that point to me. I'll just say this. There have been, let's see, since 1953, SEAL training, since 1953, 11 students have died in SEAL training. Okay. One of those died in my class 150, a guy by the name of John Tomlinson. Really, I mean, it sounds almost silly to say it's a tragedy. Of course, it's a tragedy. He froze to death on a 7-mile ocean. Oh, I mean, froze might not be the right word, but he had hypothermia and he died of low body temperature. We don't know exactly why. We were all freezing cold when we got done with that swim. We were so cold. I mean, this is hours of swimming in the open ocean with current pushing against you. The water is like about 50 degrees when we did it. And even with wetsuits, and we didn't have full wetsuits. We had, our legs were exposed, our upper torso was covered down to our wrists, and then we had a mask and a swimming hood, I believe, so that kept your head warmer. I don't know if I go so far as to say warm, but I remember when I finished the swim, I couldn't stand up for a while. I was so cold and so, I don't know, just locked into kick stroking and gliding, as we called it, swimming, that it took a while. I had to crawl up on the beach, and then finally I could stand up, and then like it felt like the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz. Things started to move again. Anyway, Tomlinson, we think maybe his wetsuit was leaky, they weren't the best wetsuits. They've been reused and recycled, and some of the stitching was frayed. And so it didn't provide the maximum amount like a brand new custom fitted wetsuit would have provided. And we think that, but all of our wetsuits were like that pretty much. They weren't perfect. I don't know. We don't know. And the medical examiners they couldn't put anything together for Tomlinson that the rest of us wouldn't have faced other than potentially substandard wetsuit. So a lot of this gets real murky. And I'll just say one more thing, and then because there's a lot, we can get into the weeds of some of what's going on. And actually, the second article is really concerning to me. And we may be able to get into that. But this first article was a little more, well, that's unfortunate, but training is inherently dangerous, right? It's inherently dangerous. You can't push guys to the limits. The whole point of buds, if I could break it down, is to push a guy to the point where you think you have a guy who's not going to quit no matter what. And that's by design. And you don't want people bailing out 40 miles behind enemy lines and going, oh, I think I should have stayed in the regular Navy. Now you could bring down a whole bunch of people if you get
Right.
your head goes wonky. So yeah, it is dangerous. I passed out underwater. That was not a fun experience in SEAL training. I was on the borderline of hypothermia many times. Hell Week sucked. I coughed and spit and sputtered, and we were all half sick when we got done. In my class, one of the things the article says is, well, that some students had to go to Balboa Naval Medical Center after Hell Week was over. Well, guess what? That happens almost every Hell Week, if not every Hell Week. So, I feel for the mother who lost her son. I mean, that is just brutal. It's just inconsolable. But, you're going into an organization that's not, it's dangerous, by inherently dangerous. And the stuff we're training to do is dangerous, not just combat. The stuff a lot of guys have died in training. And it's almost like, well, okay, one SEAL dies here, and it's 11 and 69 years. 11 of them have died in 69 years. When I was at Fort Bragg, now that's a big base. I was training with Special Forces. We talked about this in the previous episode. They had a big sign at the base that said 28 days without a fatality. Yay. And I remember driving on base one day and going, 0 days without a fatality. And it meant somebody had died the day before. And then it would go back to the count, 2 days, 3 days. I don't know what the record is, but when I was there, somebody died on base somewhere doing something. I mean, this is a massive base, but it's just to say that it's not necessarily special operations related. It is helicopters go down, fighter jets go down. People have health complications that are weird. I mean, people die in college basketball games. Some guy's heart gives out, and it's a freak thing, and nobody expects it. But it's I don't want to say it in a cavalier way, but it goes with the territory that you sign. You're signing that. Man, there's a possibility. There's always a possibility I could die. So anyway, I'm in no ways am I trying to be I don't know, callous to the tragedy and to the loss of this man. Kyle Mullins was his name, and his mother for sure. It's just horrible. It's not supposed to happen, but it does.
Right. I saw there's another article out around the same time. I think it was Rolling. Is it Rolling Stone? It's Rolling Stone
Rolling
magazine,
Stone.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone. It's talking about Fort Bragg actually. It's talking
Hmm.
about the drug problem there, and I think it said in a 2 year period, 2020, 2021, they had like I'd say somewhere I can't remember the exact number. We'll say it was between 100, 100, and 150 soldiers die from overdose, things like that.
Right.
Now, Fort Bragg, I believe, is the largest, has the most personnel. I think it might be the largest U.S. military base, period.
Wouldn't
Don't quote
surprise
me
me.
on that, but definitely the Army. So, I mean, 150 people in a 2 year period die from drug use on an army installation. Well, that did get an article, so that and you said it. I'm saying it again. Our comments are not to be harsh
Mm,
or to say that one death isn't important, but to put some perspective on it that the article certainly doesn't seem to highlight. It wants to highlight seals,
yeah.
which is good for views, and highlight, the tragic circumstances around this service member's death,
Mm.
which is terrible. Um, so right, 11 deaths in 60 some odd years versus 150 deaths in a 2 year period at one installation,
One
and that's
installation.
Fort Bragg,
Right.
where you have some folks who and you have some units that try really hard to um, to maintain some kind of elite standard, right? The airborne, the home of the airborne, the 82nd Airborne Division, and then the Special
Oh,
Forces,
yeah.
Special Operations units there. But what do the numbers look like at an armored post in the middle of Texas somewhere? I'd be interested.
Yeah.
I would wager that the numbers are high there too. Yeah, training deaths, they happen. They're horrible, especially in the initial training. They're rare, very pretty rare, right? 11 and 60 some odd. You look
Yeah.
at Ranger School deaths. Um, someone from the Third Ranger Battalion died. I'd say within the last year at Ranger School. I believe he passed away in the Florida phase, something to do with it may have been a drowning. I don't know the particulars, and I don't know the ranger involved, but it definitely does happen. We also lose a lot of folks during the normal training cycle. It happens, right?
Right.
Way more SEALs have died during a workup if you over those 60 some odd years than have done it in the basic
Right.
in the during buds. So you would expect to see that. What's the article trying other than getting clicks and views and helping someone's journalistic career, which is fine, I guess. That's what it is. But I mean, what is it attempting to do? Is it to say that Buds is too hard? I mean, is that I'm at this point I'm asking you, like, do you think the intent is like Buds is too hard? Buds is asking unrealistic things of the candidates. Would you say
Mhm.
would you say that Buds was 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 unrealistic in terms of what it was asking you to do as a candidate versus what you were asked to do as an active duty SEAL?
Yeah. No, no way. Couple thoughts. This, I think I mentioned this before. The stuff, the stuff we did in the teams was way more dangerous and way harder and way potentially more lethal in training. I'm talking about
Right.
than what we ever did in buds. It's not to say you don't have fatalities in buds, like I say, but it's not. Yeah, nothing like when you get to the advanced training. I mean, it said something. One of the comments that I highlighted was, uh, "It's too brutal and too often causes concussions, broken bones, dangerous infections, and near drownings." I don't know that too brutal. Yes, you can get concussions. People do. You can get broken bones. People got those all the time. Not only everything from stress fractures to like when we landed doing rock portage, we're coming in with these heavy boats on rocks with 5, 6, 7 foot waves. You fall out at the wrong time and get your leg between the boat and the rocks. There's a fair likelihood you're going to have a broken bone.
Sure.
And it's not like they don't teach you how to stay in a safe position in relation to the rocks. They do. It doesn't mention all of this. Dangerous infections. Well, heck, any military training could potentially expose you to a dangerous infection if you I mean, you could just be going across a river and get a flesh-eating bacteria. I mean, it happens. It's nothing SEAL specific. And near drownings, again, look, a ranger maybe possibly drowned in training. It's not SEAL specific. So, and I guess there's another statement that a few of, if any, courses have such a high rate of failure. Well, they're just talking about the attrition rate there. That's not the fatality rate. We probably have the low. that's would be interesting to look at. It's up next to, like, of course, you've got, there's more people in the larger units, but I don't know that it's any higher than any other unit as far as fatality. But failure means quitting. That doesn't mean, it almost sounds like that means fatality. It's kind of a few, any
Mm-hmm.
courses have so high a rate of failure. But wait, we're talking about a guy dying tragically in a really sad situation,
Right.
but not how many people quit. All right. So there's a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, it sounds like it's the article is asking the question, should this be this hard?
Right.
Should this young man
Yeah.
wow, there are a lot of it. This is a tough, this is a tough course. Should it be this tough?
Yeah.
This this service member um was having such a hard time,
Hmm.
or was so convinced that they couldn't complete it otherwise, that they began to use unprescribed medical interventions to to help him through it. Like,
Hmm.
should it be this hard?
Right.
I don't know if the author is trying to say no, it shouldn't be this hard,
Hmm.
or these standards are unrealistic. That may be it, because everyone's got a perspective, but
Hmm.
that's definitely seems like that's more so he's using the death as a jumping off point for why should SEAL training be this hard,
Right.
without then I didn't see anything in the article that answered the question from the perspective of someone like yourself
Yeah.
who went through it and who had a career.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so hard when you're dealing with these situations where some of the information has not been divulged.
Right.
He knew his perspective.
Hmm.
He knew the mom's really sad.
Hmm.
There may have been, he sounds like he was pretty sick when he got out of Hell Week.
Yeah.
Why? A question I would have was, why didn't they send him to Balboa if he's coughing blood? And if that doesn't sound, that sounds like he needs medical attention. But it's hard to start pointing fingers when you weren't there. Like, the human body is incredibly resilient. What if, I don't know what, maybe there was a lapse of medical attention given to him at the end, because he
Hmm.
died. He went back, he was sent back to his barracks, and he just laid down on the floor and his heart stopped beating.
Hmm.
Man, he was really sick. Why in your out processing, we got physicals every day.
Hmm.
Somebody just not paying attention, that'd be equally tragic. Anyway, there's all
At a
these
cer-
questions.
at a certain point in Hell Week, I mean, this is my just what I've heard from different perspectives. At a certain point, you're probably good to go, right?
Yeah.
I guess where I'm really going with this um, is the med role, which is what this person would have been looking at. Is it is You're not going to get kicked out for a
No.
med role, right?
Right.
Especially knowing that there's a history of folks coming out of Hell Week beat up
Right.
and sick, right? That okay, you're a little sicker than most. What's the fear around taking a med roll, or saying somewhere along the way, or showing them, hey, look, I'm coughing up blood here, and then feeling relatively confident that okay, I'll get the med roll. I need it. He's not going to pick up if you're coughing up blood the way they described. You're not picking up the next phase good to go.
Right.
If
Yeah.
anything, you're more likely to fail if you attempt to hide it. Like you said, so many
That's,
questions, so many things we
yeah.
don't know, we may never know. That was when I first saw that. I think you sent me the article or something like that.
Yeah.
I texted you. I said, why wouldn't you just take the med roll? What's the big
Right.
deal? You
Right.
know, you get
Yeah.
far enough into Hell Week. My understanding is
Yeah.
you're a good person. You made it far enough. You get the med roll. You're sick. You're just kind of existing. I'm just talking from what I've heard. You
That's right.
take the med roll. Like, what's
Yeah.
the big deal?
Well, I hope some of these questions get answered, because some of them are just out of anybody's ability to answer.
Right.
I would just like to say, on behalf of the organization as a whole, as I knew it when I was in, it said, one quote, the Seaman Mullins family says that, okay, the official cause of death was bacterial pneumonia. Okay. But the Seaman Mullins family says the true case was the course itself. if it was the course itself, wouldn't everybody have died? Like, if the cause of death was the course, why wouldn't
Yeah.
all of the people have died?
It yeah, it's they wanted for their son, they wanted the moment at the end where he graduates and he gets his certificate, and he's standing there in his whites, and that's what they were looking forward to, and that's what he was fighting for, and they didn't get it. And this person wrote the article and got their comments in a time when it's still fresh and painful, and
Yeah.
they're too many. There's not enough information there. There's a lot of opining on what it could be or what people were thinking or what motivations are all around, and it's just the fact is that everybody else in that class is, well, that unless someone else has passed away, everyone
No,
else is alive. Everyone else went through
yeah,
presumably the same thing, standing literally next to them, right?
right.
And everyone takes the training a different way, and you know, the only thing I could think of in terms of the his own medical interventions was, here's a person who is taking a huge risk by taking this stuff. Uh, I can only guess that they're not supposed to self-medicate. I at least know from my career,
Hmm.
I think at RIP, which is now RASP or Ranger School, yeah, I'm pretty sure you could get kicked out if you had just a bottle of aspirin or Tylenol or
Really?
ibuprofen. Like
Wow.
you couldn't have that. You couldn't self-medicate. I believe. I'm trying to remember,
Hmm.
right? But I definitely know you couldn't have it on you. Now, if you took it, are they testing for ibuprofen? But it was very basic things you couldn't take. So, the idea of taking whatever it is he allegedly took, you know, um, you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk there.
Well, it
Um,
wasn't aspirin he was taking. This article, he was taking, they were saying steroids,
yeah, steroids, and then
other drugs in violation of Navy regulations. So I don't know what, and this gets far beyond our field of expertise. We
yeah,
start getting into drugs. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know. Would steroids hurt you? Would they help you? I have no idea. Um, yeah, yeah, and this is where the article is kind of frustrating to me because like, okay, now this cheating and using drugs and buds, that's a separate issue. Like, okay,
hmm
is number issue number one is buds too brutal? Is it too torturous? Uh, that's one question. And then, well, are guys cheating a lot by using performance enhancing drugs in buds? Is a whole separate question. And maybe if they
yeah,
are, that's probably not good, in my opinion. We've all done stupid things to try to get ahead, but you know, everything up to the point of something being illegal, you know, is probably, I'd say, yeah, go for it. I mean, if it's healthy for you, but I don't. Again, you get into these gray areas where I'm not really sure. I mean, maybe steroids would cause you to push yourself harder and do more internal damage than one would if their body were saying, "Hey, slow down, buddy." Like the
right,
funny those old uh Murphy's Law of Armed Conflict. I don't know if you've ever heard those. Um,
sure,
a sucking chest wound is nature's way of saying slow down.
yeah,
But not to make light of a sucking chest wound, but um, so now I could maybe transition because like we could beat this one all day. It's just like okay, it's dangerous training. It's dangerous for a reason. You're not going out. It's not. It's a selection process that's not designed, to get a group of guys going out selling Girl Scout cookies. We're going down doing some serious business. That we could die at any day. We strap on a kit in training or otherwise. So there's that. I mean, it's okay. Now, the second article, and we can go back and forth wherever, but some statistics were brought up that this attrition rate like skyrocketed between the 80s and like real recently. Like I think within the last year or two. And this, I haven't processed the whole other article. I just saw it today that there was a follow-up companion piece to this one. But let me just say, a recent Buds class had a 7% graduation rate. That's pretty darn low. Our class, but what didn't make sense was that they said in the 80s it was somewhere around 40% success rate. Well, that's if you take the 80s as a whole, I know that not to be true. It was always around 20 to 25% average success rate. So 80 to what 75% attrition rate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now 7% raises my eyebrows a little bit. And the second article talks about a new SEAL who had come as a commander to Buds, whose name is Bradley Geary, captain, and he came from Dev Group, and he brought on a bunch of well, I don't know about a bunch, but a number of Dev Group instructors from Dev Group, combat hardened dudes. Let's put it that way. And there was also a group that he removed, or I don't know if it was him, but a group of senior civilian advisors, and they were all former SEALs, were there to make sure excessive, uh, unnecessary abuse was not occurring, right? They were relieved. They just said, we don't need you anymore. And so there's these accusations that a new level of ferocity crept in of guys who were exposed to combat that was just getting crazy. I mean, getting really brutal. Now, and I have no idea of any of that. That's not based on any of my experience. I'm just reading Mr. Phillips' reporting. And so the chief of naval operations, that's the CNO, that's the highest ranking naval member who's at the Pentagon, has just launched an investigation into this because it sounds like there may be more to it than just meets the eye. So I have no knowledge of any of that. Just want to say up front, if that's the case, whoa, um, that's not good. I mean, it was hard enough back in the day when I did it, and we had 110 guys started and 19 originals finished. That's pretty high attrition rate. But so maybe there's something going on with that.
Maybe. You know, for forever, people in training have talked about how their instructors were crazy, like
Mm-hmm.
post Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
folks. They're like, man, these guys were so tough and they saw combat and whatever.
Yeah.
That seems to me like maybe that's a easy scapegoat, like, oh, here are these crazy SEALs again, and now they're coming in here and the it, if it is even an argument, it doesn't make sense. So if someone were arguing against that, so someone were arguing against Dev Group, a commander from Dev Group coming in, and he's in charge of Buds now, and he's made modifications to the course that he believes better reflects combat conditions, maybe some tweaks here and there, and then that that results in the course being harder.
Mm-hmm.
um, what's the argument against that then? I mean, the
Yeah.
argument has to be that he's just wrong, that the changes
Right.
they made do not reflect combat requirements. That has to be the only standing you have
Yeah.
at
Right.
that point. The fact that it made the course harder doesn't really matter. It
Mm-hmm.
the change, the intent of the change was to reflect combat requirements, and so therefore, if you're arguing against anything, you're arguing that no, that's not actually a combat requirement. Everything else is just noise, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you're just saying, because on the flip side, what is it people are trying to say? Are they trying to say, well,
Yeah.
everyone who wants to be a SEAL should be able to be a SEAL? And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like that's the easy way out from the other perspective. Like, everyone's soft, everyone wants a trophy. Everyone, if you want to be a SEAL, you should be a SEAL. It shouldn't be that hard. Why is it that hard?
Yeah.
I don't. I've not heard anyone actually say that. Maybe they think that, but that
Right.
doesn't sound believable to me.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's really just, again, clickbait. Is what it is. I'm more exasperated than anything. But
Yeah.
could there be something there? Sure. And could it also be a little bit of everything? Is
Yeah.
what I really think it ultimately is. Did a guy come in and make Buds a touch harder, some way, somehow? Again, I if you don't know, I definitely don't know.
Yeah.
Then maybe that's true, and maybe it is true that a couple instructors are writing the candidates harder then they definitely, I mean, every candidate for anything in the history of the world has always thought their instructors were too hard on them. That's also, that's also a thing.
There's so many unknowns, it's just ridiculous. There,
Yeah.
like I had a friend recently tell me, like, remember back in an episode where I was talking about buds, our times had to get faster each time, our own personal times.
Hmm.
Well, I remember that like it was yesterday. And this guy who years later than me, I mean, years later, like a long time later, said, we weren't doing that when I was an instructor there. I'm like, did they drop it as a, he goes, I don't know. We just, all you had to do is pass the minimum, the basic minimum for each phase. And I was like, man, that I remember them keeping our times and kicking our butts if we didn't beat our time. I mean, you could retest, but you, and so things do change clearly, and a lot of things probably change. Who knows? I haven't been there since God knows when. But um, so may so let's say that was dialed back, right? So it made it a little easier because you didn't. It's hard to beat your previous time every time. So
Hmm.
they dialed it back for a while. Let's say these new instructors said, we liked that when we were in training. It really pushed us hard. It's
Hmm.
a better taste of combat. Okay, that might up the attrition rate a little bit if people have settled into not having to do that. So there's just a million things, and I'm not saying that I'm not even I'm just throwing that out as a hypothetical,
Right.
but it's an example of how, yeah, things can shift back and forth in any direction. And I don't know that it's a systematic problem necessarily. It's people trying to train warriors to be hard warriors, and then, you know, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
They
I
need
mean,
more density.
yeah, we're attempting to react to something that really has no foundation. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
hey, seals are bad again. That's the gist of it. And as representing the ranger community, I'm all for that. But having to discuss it makes it tough. Another thing I was thinking about is like the term attrition, right? Another thing can be like what counts as attrition and when. Um, what we definitely know about the seals is that after some high profile missions, movies, books, comic books, merchandise, after seals became popular, recruiting became easier for the seals.
Right,
Okay.
right, right,
And so
right. That's a good point.
they have more people making the attempt,
Right.
right? And so does attrition measured in your time, is it measured
Mhm.
exactly the same way as it is today? I bet you it's not.
I
I
bet
bet you
you
it's
it's
not.
not.
I bet you when it was 7%, I'm sure there were people who liked seeing 7%.
Yeah.
Now, there are, from a Manning perspective, if you're a grown up in the
Right.
SEAL community, and um, you know, it's not just about how hard the teams is. Someone there has to be the responsible adult and talk about Manning. I need SEALs here, and I need it can't just be about create the hardest person that's ever lived and then pin a gold bird to them. It has to be
Right.
about I've got X number of platoons and I need X number of operators to fill those platoons, and we want to tweak the levers to be able to maintain that.
Yeah.
But if anything, having more people make the attempt would have been better. Is the ideal position to be in, because now you can really sort through a larger number of folks and get like the cream of the crop. So another question that
Yeah.
the article doesn't even mention. I don't think I read it.
Right.
It doesn't even talk about how attrition is measured at what point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm aware that they've added so many they've had like prep parts to the training, right? And
Right.
they've had it at times and they took it away at times and then they brought
Yeah.
it back under different names. So
Yeah. They got they now, from what I understand, they get a lot more pre-training. I mean, almost like mini buds
mhm.
before they even go to buds. We just came from A school with our sea bag and we're like, oh, hello. I mean,
Hope you worked out. Welcome.
yeah, right. Exactly. Hope you practiced a little drown proofing because you're going to have some fun in the next couple of weeks. Gosh, yeah. Yeah,
It,
there's just so much that,
the last thing I was just thinking is, and this is just sort of a general comment, but I do believe for all these things, and I see it. I can see it. I can see it in comments around the web. Not that I should be looking at comments for anything, but there's also a piece of it which is, you know, what they say, life imitates art or whatever, or
Mhm.
there's a part of it where the teams likes the idea that buds is the hardest
Yeah.
selection course in the world, right?
Mm.
And
Right.
and is there a part of it where, what's the phrase? It's like, pe- or could people be molding it into something that it never really was? Does that make
Right.
any
Oh,
sense?
yeah. Yeah,
Right? Is
absolutely.
it's, oh, it was so hard when I went through, and it should reflect that. And it's like, it wasn't, was it? Was
Yeah.
it as hard as you want it to be and as you want to sell?
Yeah,
Because
it
it
gets
can. Yeah, go ahead.
no, no. Yeah, exactly. It gets into one's own inner psyche
Yeah.
about it's just like the old thing where when I was a kid, I had to walk uphill both ways to school.
Right.
And it's like, no, you didn't. That's no such thing. But you want to be a cut above this new
Right.
soft generation. And it's always a tendency to do that, to say, well, the new generation is soft, or we were hard, and I don't know, maybe there's some truth to that, but
Right.
you're kicking around things that you can't, they're not tangible. I don't know.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
I think ultimately I settle on, uh, it's probably a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have definitely seen things, and because I went to RIP and it became RASP. I was around and I was working whenever that transition was taking place, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of like, is this is this harder? Is this easier? There was a lot of discussions about that, and there was a lot of, you know, the way
Yeah.
people, RASP introduced some more training, right? So, you know, guys start to ask themselves, well, I just did the 4 week version, so the 4 week version must have been harder because just we were just getting our faces beat in. There wasn't a lot of training happening,
Right.
versus what I don't even know how long it is RASP is. So, I think it's a little bit of everything.
It is. I agree. And I think sometimes it's a matter of semantics. And
Yeah.
I'll follow up with one that drove me crazy in this article. And this is his family talking, okay? I'm not
Hmm.
They say it's training, but it's torture. Now wait a second. Why not say it is a torturous form of training?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
yeah, no, it's not training, it's torture. That you're setting up this either or fallacy where it's not this, it's this. It's like, no, it's both. You're kind of playing with words there, but hey, would like to say for sure. I mean, it's real tragedy, and I feel for his family
Yeah.
and for him, man. That sucks, and there's just nothing worse than losing a man who's a patriot and
Hmm.
training to defend our country. That shouldn't happen.